She had ridden 6 miles in the dark on a Thursday in November because the light didn't come. She had done this without pausing long enough to think about what it said about her, which was the honest way to do it. The kind of decision that is made correctly when it is made before the thinking has time to make it complicated. Cora had been on the west side of the canyon for 4 years, since the spring of 1878, when she had come west with her brother Ellis. They had come with the specific optimism of two people who had made a plan together and believed in it, which was the best kind of optimism, the kind that has a practical structure underneath it. Ellis was 31 and she was 35, and they had pooled their savings and done their research and chosen the Colorado Territory for the water access and the land prices and the possibility of a cattle operation on a scale that Ohio would not have permitted them. They had filed adjacent claims on the west side of the canyon and had spent the summer of 1878 building the homestead and the following spring expanding it, and the fall of 1879 understanding that Ellis's chest complaint, which had been chronic but manageable in Ohio's lower elevation, was not manageable at the altitude of the Colorado Plateau. He had died in November of 1879, which was 3 years and 8 months after they had come west together, which was not long enough. She had stayed because the homestead was hers and Ellis's, and because going back to Ohio would have required becoming again the person she had been in Ohio, who was the person who had spent 35 years deciding to leave and had finally left, and she had decided that person was done. She was a capable woman alone on a homestead, which was a hard thing, and she had made the particular peace with it that comes not from choosing it, but from living inside it until the living becomes its own kind of answer. She was 39 years old and had been running the west side alone for 3 years and had gotten very good at it, and had found that getting good at something does not entirely compensate for who you are good at it without, which is a fact she carried with some composure and which the signal system had been a quiet and insufficient answer to. The canyon between the west and east homesteads was approximately 200 yards wide at the narrowest point and ran north-south through both their properties, which were perhaps a quarter-mile apart as the crow flew and 6 miles apart as the road went. The canyon walls were too steep for descent and the canyon floor too rocky and narrow for a useful crossing, which meant that two people who could see each other's windows clearly across the distance, could see in clear weather the glow of a lamp and even a figure at a lit window, could not reach each other in less than 6 miles of road. This was the specific cruelty of canyon geography on the Colorado frontier: proximity without access. The particular version of distance that was worse than actual distance because you could see across it. Dicklin Marsh had been on the east side homestead for 6 years, since the fall of 1876, when he had come west from Missouri with the proceeds of a farm sale and the specific determination of a man who has decided to stop losing the same argument with the same piece of land and go somewhere he hasn't failed yet. The Missouri farm had been his father's before him, which made the failure worse in a specific way. Not worse than a failure of his own exactly, but differently weighted, carrying the additional load of having failed at something that had worked for someone else. He had sold what was sellable and left the rest and come west with $600 and the kind of clarity that comes from running out of other options. The East Side homestead had been a claim on undeveloped land when he took it. He had built the house himself over the first 2 summers, adding to it as he understood what he needed and as the operation generated enough to add with. 6 years had produced a solid 2-room house, a good barn, a cattle operation of 15 head that was neither failing nor thriving but was consistently adequate, a kitchen garden that made up the difference between adequate and comfortable in the winters, and the specific self-sufficiency of a man who has been doing everything himself for long enough that the doing of things is no longer the problem. The things he could not do alone he had taught himself or had found another way, and the things that genuinely required another person he had managed without. He was 45 years old and had not married, which was not from any shortage of interest in the institution but from the particular accumulation of years and a life that had not had room for it. First the Missouri farm's demands, then the building of the East Side homestead, then the 6 years of running it alone, each year adding to a kind of settled solitude that was not unhappiness but was its own thing, with its own weight and its own habits. One of its habits was standing at the east window at 9 o'clock and sending one flash at the west side and waiting for hers to come back. which it always did, which was the most reliable thing in his life on the Colorado frontier, and which he had spent 4 years not examining too carefully for what it said about him. The signal system had begun in the first winter, which was the winter of 1878 going into 1879. The second winter, Cora had been on the west side, and the third, Declan, had been on the east. Cora had gotten sick in December, a bad fever of the kind that went up fast and showed no intention of coming down, and she had kept her lamp in the window all through the night of December 14th because she was too ill to remember to put it out, and too feverish to care, and the lamp had burned through her oil and was still faintly glowing at 4 in the morning when Declan saw it from his east window. He had looked at the light for a few minutes. A lamp burning at 4 in the morning through a homestead window was not the signal of a person who was well. And then he had gotten his horse and ridden the 6 miles around the canyon in the December dark and knocked at her door at 4:30 in the morning, and found her feverish and alone and in the particular state of a person who has been sick enough that they have stopped managing the situation properly. He had stayed for 2 days, which was what the situation required and which he had provided without making anything of it. The way you do things that need doing when you are the person available to do them. On the morning he left, she was on the other side of the fever, still pale and thin from it, but herself again, which he could see in the directness of her eyes. She had said, "One flash at 9 o'clock means I'm fine. I'll watch for yours." He had looked at her for a moment. She was entirely serious, in the way she was serious about most things, and he understood that she was not expressing a sentiment but making a proposal, a practical arrangement, the kind of thing two isolated people on opposite sides of a canyon make when they have established that the 6 miles is navigable and have decided to know about each other's welfare. He had said, "Same," and they had done it every night since. One flash at 9, hers from the west, his from the east. The small amber confirmation that crossed the canyon every night and had not failed in 4 years until the Thursday in November when he dropped the lantern. 4 years of 9 o'clock signals. 1 flash, alive and well. 2 flashes, weather coming, take care. 3 flashes had never been used, but they both knew what 3 meant, which was come. The system was efficient. It carried exactly what it needed to carry and nothing more, which was also exactly what it did not carry, which was considerable. Cora had come to understand the signal system, somewhere in the second year, as the thing it actually was rather than the thing she had been telling herself it was. She had told herself it was practical, the sensible precaution of 2 isolated homesteaders, the kind of safety arrangement that the frontier made necessary when 2 properties were within sight of each other and 6 miles from each other simultaneously. This was accurate as far as it went, and she had stayed within the accuracy for a full year before she had to acknowledge that accuracy was not the whole picture. What the accuracy did not account for was what it meant that she had the lamp ready at 8 o'clock every evening before the 9 o'clock signal. What it did not account for was the specific shape of the weight, the way the evening settled and oriented itself toward 9 o'clock, the way she found herself at the west window earlier than necessary, looking across the canyon at the east rim and the dark shape of his homestead. What it did not account for was the quality of what she felt when his flash came. Not relief exactly, because she had stopped being worried for him as a primary response sometime in the first year, and the feeling that replaced it was different and warmer, and she had not called it by its name. And what it did not account for was the specific quality of a night on which she had seen his flash and gone to bed knowing he was fine, and had found this knowledge to be the thing that made the night quiet and navigable, which was not what a safety arrangement is supposed to do. She had done the accounting in the second year and had put it somewhere she did not have to look at it. She was 39 years old and had Ellis to mourn and a homestead to run, and the canyon between them was not a metaphor. It was an actual canyon, 6 miles around, and the 6 miles required a reason sufficient to the distance, and 4 years of nightly signals had not produced a reason of that kind. So she had sent her flash every night and watched for his, and had accepted that this was what they had and that it was enough, and had also not been enough, which is where most true things live for a long time before they find a way to be said. On the Thursday in November, she sent her flash at 9:15. Which was slightly later than usual because she had been at the south barn dealing with a stubborn latch that had been wrong since August. She stood at the west window and watched the east side. 10 o'clock. She put more wood on the fire. 10:15. 10:30. She moved through the practical considerations quickly, the way she moved through most things. Weather obscuring the view, the night was clear. He was asleep. He was never asleep at 9. Something was wrong. This was the one that moved her feet. She put on her canvas coat over her dress and her heavy boots, and wrapped her gray wool scarf around her neck, and saddled her horse in 8 minutes, and was on the canyon road by 10:45, heading north toward the road that curved around the canyon and came down the east side. The November night was cold and clear, and the road was familiar, which helped. And the 6 miles felt like more than 6 miles at night in November, on a horse who was not entirely sure about this expedition, but she covered it. She arrived at Declan's east side gate at midnight. His light was on, not the 9 o'clock signal lamp, but his reading candle, visible through the east window. She dismounted and knocked at his door. He opened it within 30 seconds, which meant he had heard the horse and was not surprised, which meant he had been expecting something, which she filed away. He stood in the doorway in his flannel shirt and canvas trousers with his hair slightly disheveled from the evening, and he looked at her standing there at midnight with her braid loose and her coat thrown on over her nightgown and her horse breathing behind her, and he said, "Cora." She said, "You didn't signal." He said, "I dropped the lantern." She said, "Is that all?" He said, "Yes." She said, "Nothing else?" He said, "Nothing else. I'm sorry. I didn't think about what you'd see." She said, "No, you didn't." A pause. She said, "You owe me 6 miles." He said, "I know." He looked at her for a moment. The midnight look of a man who has just been handed information about both of them that neither of them has said out loud in 4 years. And he said, "How would you like to be repaid?" She said, "I'll think about it." She started to turn back to her horse. He said her name, and she turned. He said, "Come inside. It's midnight and it's November and you've ridden 6 miles in the cold." She said she should get back. He said, "The canyon road at midnight going back is the same road you came on going out. Wait for first light." She said, "I came on it to get here." He said, "I know. I'd rather you didn't go back on it until morning." She looked at him for a long moment. She said, "You have coffee?" He said, "I can make it." She said, "All right." She tied her horse and went inside. They sat at his kitchen table and he made coffee, which took several minutes and gave both of them time to settle into the situation, which was midnight, kitchen table, 6 miles of dark road behind her. The conversation they had not had in 4 years in front of them. She took off her canvas coat and draped it on the chair beside her and wrapped her hands around the coffee cup and looked at the kitchen, his kitchen, which she had not been in before, which had the specific order of a man who has organized things to work for one person and has been consistent about it. Books on the shelf by the window. The broken lantern's pieces swept to the side by the stove. A calendar on the wall with the Thursday circled, something he had needed to remember. They talked, not about the signal or the lantern, but about the other things. The things that had been accumulating for 4 years of one-flash signals and needed somewhere to go. She told him about Ellis, which she had not told anyone in full since the first winter. The chest complaint that had been manageable in Ohio and the way it had not been manageable at elevation, and the 2 months between the beginning of the bad signs and the end of them, and how she had stayed because the homestead was hers and going back was not a direction she had. He listened in the way he listened to things that mattered, completely, without filling the silences. When she finished, he said, "I didn't know about your brother," she said. "No one here did." He said, "I'm sorry," she said. "I know." She said, "It was 4 years ago. I've made my peace with it." He said, "Yes." He said, "That's not the same as it being gone." She said, "No, it isn't." He told her about Missouri, which he had not told anyone in full since he left it. The farm that had been his father's. The 3 years of trying to make the arithmetic work after a bad drought had started the decline. The specific clarity of the morning he had decided to sell. She asked about his cattle in the specific way of someone who knows what the questions mean. And he told her the actual state of the East Side operation, not the general account he gave to buyers who passed through, but the real account, what was working and what needed work and what he had been thinking about for the following season. She had opinions about 2 of the 3 things he mentioned, and she stated them, and one of them was right and one of them was interesting, and he said so about both. which she found more useful than agreement would have been. At some point he asked about the south barn latch she had mentioned. She described the problem. The gate wouldn't latch properly in cold weather, the expansion of the metal. He described the fix in 30 seconds. It was simple and she had not seen it because she had been approaching the problem from the wrong angle for 3 months. She said, "That's the 6 miles." He said, "I had in mind something more than a gate latch for the 6 miles." She said, "I said I'd think of something." He said, "You also said you'd already thought about it." She looked at him across the table in the candlelight. She said, "I said that, yes." He said, "And," she said, "one thing at a time." He said, "All right." He poured more coffee. She stayed, and they kept talking. And the night did what nights do when the conversation is the one that has been waiting. It passed without either of them noticing how much of it had passed. At first light she got her horse. He walked out with her to the east gate in the November dawn, both of them in their coats in the cold, the east canyon wall catching the first pale light in a way that made the stone look warmer than it was. She mounted and looked down at him from the horse. She said, "One flash at 9, he said, "every night." She said, "And if the lantern breaks, send something, a candle in the window, anything." He said, "I'll keep a spare." She said, "Do that." A pause. She said, "I'm going to fix the gate latch myself this week." He said, "You don't have to." She said, "I know I don't have to. I said I'd think of something else for the 6 miles." He said, "Take your time." She said, "I have been taking my time, 4 years of it." He looked at her with the light gray eyes that had been visible from the west window as a lantern flash for 4 years and which were, she found, considerably more legible in person. He said, "Yes." She said, "I'll think of something." He said, "I know you will." She turned her horse toward the north road and rode. The 6 miles back were the same road she had ridden south at midnight. Same road, same November cold, same horse, but entirely different in the first light. The way all roads are different in the direction you have chosen to go in versus the direction you were afraid of. She arrived at the West homestead at first light and put her horse away and went inside and made her coffee and sat at the west window looking at the east side, which was visible now in the morning light. She could see his barn roof and the corner of his house and the line of fence on his south property. All of it the same as it had always been and different in the way of things you have looked at a long time and have now looked at from the inside. At 9 o'clock that evening she sent her one flash. She stood at the west window and watched the east side. His signal came at 9 o'clock and 3 seconds, earlier than he had ever sent it, which meant he had been at his window with his new lantern already lit and his hand ready. One flash. Amber. Brief. Confirmed. She stood at the west window for a while after his signal faded, looking at the dark east side that was no longer just the east side of the canyon but something else now. Something with a name she was still deciding how to use. Some signals you don't need the dark to read. Some things are said most clearly by the light that answers, not the light itself, but the timing of it, the earliness of it, the hand that was already on the lamp and waiting. Some things you stop needing to work up to when the working up has been done in a dark kitchen at midnight over coffee and the 6 miles and 4 years of one flash signals that were carrying more than they said.